code, which will be presented by our senior planner, Vera Collias, and eventually probably Leila Aman.
Thank you very much, Mayor, members of council. Vera Coley, Senior Planner. I'm going to present our code amendments that we're proposing that are related to our temporary use permits, specifically relating to emergency housing. And I'm going to share my screen, and then I'm going to ask you if you can see it. So I'm hoping this will work. Is everyone seeing a PowerPoint presentation? Great. Okay,
Yes,
good.
ma'am.
Good. Okay. So let me go to the next slide. There we go. The staff has been before the Planning Commission, both at a work session and then a public hearing. And based on discussions that we had with the Planning Commission at their work session on November 10th, staff made some changes to how we were proposing this code amendment. We're proposing a two-phase approach to temporary and transitional housing here in the city. The first phase is to formalize a process for temporary emergency shelters for warming, cooling, or hazardous air quality situations. And then the second phase will be focused on permanent and semi-permanent transitional housing. So that's a little ways down the road. Right now, staff is in the initial stages of research for that phase, and we anticipate conducting a needs analysis and beginning some discussions at the second half of 2021. And then a third aspect of this issue of temporary and transitional housing and emergency housing is related specifically to emergency management situations. The city's emergency management coordinator is going to attend a planning commission meeting, and I assume a city council meeting at a future date to provide an update on the city's emergency planning efforts, including efforts related to shorter and longer term emergency shelters. The proposed code amendments that we're bringing forward relate specifically to the section of the code that deals with temporary use permits. And we are bringing this forward because right now the code does not specifically allow for temporary housing as being one of the allowed uses for a temporary use permit. We've used this temporary use permit section of the code to permit the outdoor seating that we're allowing right now in response to the coronavirus situation. We've used this permitting process to allow for temporary construction parking on properties. We used it for the parking, the pilot or that parking situation that we did down in Island Station during some of the work that Kelly Brooks was doing. So there are some situations and descriptions of situations within the code, but there wasn't anything that kind of neatly fit into us being allowed or being able to use this very clearly for emergency housing situations. So that's why we wanted to insert this particular language to provide us with the flexibility to be able to issue these permits, particularly as the winter is coming up. I mean, they say it's winter coming up soon, but it's still only just raining, but maybe something will happen. The code section includes some requirements and limitations within the language. Staff explored what neighboring communities are doing to address these, I think how we would describe seasonal kind of sheltering needs. And Clackamas County and Oregon City both utilize what we included within our staff report package, a joint policy with Clackamas Fire District for warming shelters, because this is specifically for indoor sheltering. And this would allow a building that's not normally used for shelter purposes or designated as residential occupancy to be used as a temporary shelter. So we have included within the code a reference to being subject to this joint agreement or joint policy for temporary emergency shelters. And we would reference that policy within the code, and that draft policy was included as part of the staff report and materials. And that policy is a partnership between the local jurisdictions, the planning division, building official, and Clackamas Fire District. And it outlines really clear and consistent standards for what that indoor sheltering needs to meet in order to be able to be used as a temporary shelter. So these standards don't apply to vehicles. This is all about indoor shelters for these seasonal situations. The permits are proposed to be for a maximum of 90 days in any 12-month period, with an option for one 30-day extension. And that 90-day timeframe comes pretty directly from the building code. If it's beyond that 90 days, it's not temporary anymore. And now all the building code stuff starts to come in. So the 90 days with a 30-day extension, we talked this through with our building official, and she's comfortable with this. So again, we're proposing these amendments to allow for temporary emergency shelters to be able, for permits to be able to be issued through this temporary use permit program, subject to the requirements and limitations that we've included within the code section. So that concludes my presentation. Layla Amon, our Community Development Director, is here to answer any questions that I'm not able to answer. But hopefully we've kept this sort of to the point, and that we want to be able to react to any upcoming shelter situations that will come up with the winter kind of coming up. So happy to answer any questions, or if you have any changes or anything like that, we can certainly work through that. The Planning Commission recommended approval of this language through their public hearing that we just recently had. But the work session here is the opportunity for us to tweak some things before we come before you folks in January for the full public hearing. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can have a discussion.
So I had just a point of information more than anything, really, that so the EPA has a regional effort to come up with an emergency preparedness plan that's for the 5 counties that make up the metro area, the sort of federal definition. And they're doing a workshop, I think in early January, and Brenna's signed up for it. I'm signed up for the portion that's for electeds. But just so you know that's happening, it is specifically for extreme heat events and for smoke events. So I think Brenna's on top of it, but there may be information that comes out of that around best practices that we might want to incorporate into this.
Cool.
So I had a couple questions. I mean, the ordinance looks pretty simple and straightforward. I had a couple questions about the MOU piece with the or the policy, joint policy piece with the fire district. First off, you call out the reduced, number of people or the increased square footage per person, which makes sense to me, but I would hope that this could be worded such that you don't have to do a new one in 6 months or whenever we get out from under the COVID restrictions. So I would think that you could word that paragraph about maximum number of applicants allowed to be the 35 square feet, with the COVID being the exception or whatever, just to save having to revisit it in 6 months. The other thing in that document is toward the end, it says, well, there's several places. Like at the beginning, it's all about Milwaukee, the building official, but then at the end, it sort of becomes more generic, where I feel like maybe this was a fire district's document and we didn't finish tailoring it for our own use. So like paragraph 10, the authority having jurisdiction shall be notified. Well, I assume that's Milwaukee. It could just say City of Milwaukee. Or you could specify the Milwaukee Planning Director or the Milwaukee Community Development Director or their designee or something like that. But I mean, I think that there's a few references in these last few paragraphs to the authority having jurisdiction. And it seems to me all of those really need to be Milwaukee. Yeah.
Okay. So one of mine is the same as Lisa's. I would see the COVID people per square foot number being an addendum to a broader, longer term policy rather than making the policy that we're writing up pertinent only to the COVID crisis, and then we're starting over for the next fire season. I think there'd easily be a way to word that as Lisa suggested. I want to push back a little bit on the 90 days in a 12-month period. What we do know for a fact is that going forward, things are going to get more extreme. We're going to have more hot days. We're going to have more cold days. We're going to have more fires. It is easily imaginable that we could have more than 90 of those in, say, 3 different events in one 12-month period, in 1 year. It seems to me arbitrary and nonsensical to box ourselves in that way. I would be looking for a loophole in the building codes thing that allows us to write this in such a way that we're not boxed in arbitrarily in the event that we have multiple bad weather events in 1 year. The next one is probably a question for the chief, but sleeping areas are not permitted in basement areas of non-fire sprinklered buildings. It makes no exception for a building that says maybe has a daylight, it's a daylight basement and has access, that you can get directly outside. It makes no exception for a basement that has multiple egress points that go directly outside, whether or not the building is sprinklered. And I think, I get the concern about fire, but in some of these situations, we have people living outside where their health is absolutely in that moment being badly affected, up to possibly including death, for sure, if they stay outside. On the off chance that there might be a fire in a building that there hasn't been a fire in the preceding 45 years, right? So we've got this rule that's very tight to keep people from being hurt, and the alternative is they're going to be outside being hurt. So I think we maybe need to have a further conversation with the chief and see if we can't find a little more wiggle room on that one as well. Because right off the top of my head, I can think of 3 churches with daylight basements, and that would be where they would probably house people, is in the big room in their basement. But they're probably not fire sprinkled. I guess that's it. Felt like a lot at the time.
Can we go back to the 90 days? I guess I had a question for staff in that, is there a reason why? I kind of read it, and I did watch the Planning Commission hearing on this, and I guess I kind of perceived that you foresaw that these are separate seasonal permits, that there's a summer seasonal permit and a winter seasonal permit, kind of. Is there a reason that we think we want to do it that way? Or do you think having one that covers all the 3 potential situations over the course of a year and perhaps is longer than 90 days makes sense?
Yeah, and the only thing I would offer up with respect to the 90-day, which Vera mentioned, is that these are for buildings that are not designed for residential use. And so building code sets that number, and that's what the building officials. So, and if you watch the Planning Commission hearing, too, that Clackamas County and unincorporated county and then Oregon City also use this policy. So it's been thoroughly vetted with the fire district and with other jurisdictions. And the main intent of them is, frankly, safety. And so we can certainly raise those issues, although I don't want to raise any hopes that there'll be any changes to it. This policy's been in place for, I think they've been using it at least for a couple of years in Oregon City. And there have been a lot of conversations around setting these guidelines, which is why we're leaning on them, is because they have been so thoroughly vetted. And I hear what you're saying, Mayor, but I do think that the guidance here is based on building safety and best practice, but we can certainly raise it and see. I think the 30-day extension is a little bit of flex that the building officials all agreed to as being a potential option. But I just want to emphasize that these shelters are not intended to be permanent. And so,
Sure.
So that's the idea, is that we're taking it through this temporary use process. And we're sort of relying on the fire district and building official interpretation of the code.
Can I
Right,
raise
but
a question about the actual, before we argue this too much? I want to point something out in the time limits paragraph in the agreement. A building may be used as a temporary shelter for a maximum 90 days within any 12-month period of time beginning on the first day of occupancy, or as approved by the local authority having jurisdiction. We are that local authority having jurisdiction, not the fire district. So I'm wondering if we're fighting about something that we have authority to do. And if that's the case, then I think that we can move this conversation over to the code itself and say, this is what we want.
If that is the case, it was not clear to me that we were the jurisdiction having authority. I perceived it as the fire district being the jurisdiction having authority.
Well, we should definitely need to clarify that, because, and I think that's terrible language, frankly, for an agreement. It needs to name the jurisdiction having authority. It shouldn't say, that's kind of catch-all language that the fire district, wanted to use with multiple partners probably. But yeah, we should clarify that, because that language is used in several places.
No, that's a great point. We can do that.
Well, can we talk about, though, who grants these permits? The fire district or us?
We do. And then there's
So it's us.
inspection. So it's us. Yes, it is us. And then we do a joint inspection with our building official does with the fire district on occupancy. So we do have more flexibility.
Right. So that would, but the fire districts, that inspection would have to do with these other points, not this time period point.
Right. It'd be convincing our building official that we would want more time.
Well, yeah, I'm just, because I'm with you, Mayor. I think that, extending the 30 days is something different. But my concern is that you could have, we would be relying on the handful of sites that have the capacity to do this. And there could be multiple events in a calendar year. They're completely separated by 90 days themselves. And so what we're saying is, within a 12-month period, that church can only be used for the fire hazard, even if there's a terrible snowstorm the following winter. That makes no sense to me.
Right.
It has nothing to do with safety. It has nothing to do with it. That is the arbitrary nature of it. I understand the building, it's not meant for permanent, habitable structure. That makes sense. We all get that. But I think we're talking about two sort of different things.
Yep, exactly.
Well, just to follow up on the language the council president was just reading about, that we're the approving body. That's even clearer up under registration, where it says the shelter's building manager shall contact the city to request approval. So, that's pretty clear. So maybe the focus does need to be in the ordinance language.
So a couple of things I just wanted to put out there. The first is, we've been approving these already. So I want to say that to the community. We've been receiving requests from Clackamas County to have temporary shelters in our churches and in some of our other facilities since I got here. And those are usually at the request of Health and Human Services. And it's very specifically because we're going into a cold spell or we're going into a hot spell. And so we've been working with Vahid. I personally am saying this just to thank him because he's been running this process just to make sure that we are addressing these as they come up. The second piece of this that has come up is this is not to say that the council couldn't go through a process for getting more shelters, period. And that is, I believe, a part of our discussion for phase 2 is there is a way for these to be longer than 90 days. And that is that we actually adopt this into code packages around permanent uses into some of these areas. And I have had conversations with staff about how we do that. So that, I believe, is a part of the phase 2 that Vera mentioned earlier. This is not precluded by making sure that we can do these things under simply my signature, which is what some of these are right now, is just how do we get these into place quickly and efficiently when there is an emergency. So I just wanted to make sure everyone was really clear about these other things that are also coming and about the opportunities to engage around that work as well.
Anybody else? Anything else? All right, cool. I look forward to seeing the second phase stuff.
All right.
Thank you very much, Vera and Layla.
Thanks very much for the comments. Appreciate it.
All right, so Vera, you're cut loose, yeah. So Layla, you're still on. Business Relief Fund and Update by Layla and Allison.
Yeah, I'm going to let Allison actually run the show since Allison kind of ran the show for the Business Relief Fund. So I just want to take a moment to thank her because she's going to thank the other members of the team. But you know, we dreamed this thing up. We came up with the funding, and Allison has a great deal of experience executing programs and just came in and got this thing off the ground and really created an efficient process, although it took quite a bit of staff time and her time and effort. By the end of it, we were really running a smooth ship. So I just want to acknowledge all the hard work Allison did. And in addition to dumping the presentation on her, is partly to allow her to take some of the credit for the work that was accomplished. So I just owe a big thanks to this team and to this council for supporting the businesses in the way that you did. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised and pleased at the outcome. So with that, I'll hand it over to you, Allie.
Thanks. I'll just start by sharing my screen. All right, does that look good to everyone? Okay, so I'm going to share an update on the Business Relief Fund. Yeah, all the work that we've done over the last year and all the support that we've been able to give Milwaukee businesses. So as you know, the impetus for the Milwaukee Business Relief Fund was the set of executive and emergency orders put in place in March 2020 to stop the spread of the novel coronavirus and the COVID-19 outbreak, and the devastating impacts that we were seeing immediately for our Milwaukee businesses. Governor Kate Brown's executive order 2007 limited restaurants to take out only, and executive order 2012 was the stay home, stay safe order that mandated all non-essential businesses to close. The city of Milwaukee acted quickly in the same time period both declaring a state of emergency and authorizing the Business Relief Fund. Ultimately, we were able to do 3 rounds of the Business Relief Fund. The first round of grants was funded by the City of Milwaukee's Construction Excise Tax Program, and the second and third rounds were both funded by the State of Oregon matching funds for a total of over $250,000 of support for Milwaukee businesses. The first round of grants we launched in April 2020, and we focused on businesses that were directly impacted by the governor's order, so told to close or go to takeout only. We kept applications open for a defined length of time, so 1 week, instead of doing a first come, first serve. This is something we felt really strongly about. It's easier for business owners when they have a defined window of time to fill out an application, especially if you're working or serving customers when that first come, first serve application opens. To promote our first round of grants, we had 5 staff in our community development department involved, Dan, Tempest, Alicia, Christina, and myself. We sent emails to all of our businesses that have a Milwaukee business license, and we made personal phone calls to share about that there was a grant program when the applications opened, and also other business resources that were available at the time. So this team made dozens of phone calls. We processed over 100 applications that came in. And this was all in our first month of working remotely. So it was a huge lift and a really kind of a way that we successfully proved our remote office environment. And businesses really appreciated hearing directly from a person at the city. And I think staff also appreciated being a part of the city's direct response to the COVID-19 pandemic. In that first round, we got over 100 applications and we were able to award 47 grants. They ranged in size from $1,500 up to $4,000. And with the help of Kelly Tucker in the finance department, we were able to cut those checks quickly and get money out the door by May 1st. This was before a lot of businesses or really before the CARES Act funding existed and was out on the street. So a lot of the first assistance that businesses saw from any government was from the city of Milwaukee. Our second round was in July 2020. In May, the state announced the Oregon COVID-19 Emergency Business Assistance Matching Fund. This allowed the city of Milwaukee to apply to the state to match the $132,000 that we'd awarded to businesses. We received this matching in 2 rounds, so $35,000 in that funded round 2, and then an additional $97,000, which funded round 3. The state set the eligibility requirements for the additional rounds. So in round 2, it was for 10 or fewer employees, and businesses had to demonstrate a 50% decline in sale or have been directly impacted, and businesses that had been unable to access CARES Act funding. We worked with our partners in Clackamas County, Gladstone, Happy Valley, Lake Oswego, and Oregon City were also releasing grants at the same time. So we did some co-promotion about the available of this grant funding. And the state also specifically asked that we do outreach to historically disadvantaged businesses, which they defined as women-owned, Asian, Black, Hispanic, and Native American. So in round 2, we awarded 15 grants totaling $35,000. Grant awards were based on the number of employees that a business had. And they range from 1,000 to about 5,000, and 50% of funds went to sole proprietors. Round 3 was also funded by the State of Oregon COVID-19 Emergency Business Assistance Matching Fund. The state tweaked the eligibility requirements a little bit for round 3, so up to 25 employees. And if a business had received CARES Act funding, that amount was subtracted from their total award available. So if a business had received a $1,000 EIDL loan and they were eligible for a $5,000 grant, they would receive $4,000 in this round. And also a huge help for this round is that we contracted with MISO, the Micro Enterprise Services of Oregon, to do a lot of the application and direct contact to businesses. That was a huge, huge help for our team to kind of, it's October now, so to put a few other things on our work plan besides just the business relief fund. So we were able to give out about $85,000 in this round. We were able to award all of the businesses that were eligible that replied. So we actually returned a little bit of funds to the state. We gave out 25 grants ranging in size from $1,500 up to $12,500. In total, we gave out 87 grants, totaling about $250,000. And the industries that received the most awards kind of reflects the industries that were most impacted by the governor's order and the COVID-19 pandemic. So the restaurant, bar, and coffee. Personal services, which includes hair salons, nail salons, barbershops, tattoos, and then medical and dental clinic, which also includes acupuncture and other face-to-face medical services, were our industries that were most likely to receive an award. 97% of our awards went to businesses with 10 or fewer employees. 73% were women-owned businesses, and 41% were businesses that were owned by a person of color. We recently issued a survey out to our businesses that received a grant. So the numbers I'm reporting now are kind of our preliminary results. We haven't heard from all businesses yet. But so far what we've heard is that folks use their grant for lease or commercial mortgage payments, payroll, and utilities were kind of the highest spending categories. And then this is sort of just a touch point of how businesses are doing. So 47% have had a 50% decline in business revenue. 57% have had to lay off or furlough employees at some point in the past year. 57% were able to access CARES Act resources, so either a PPP or an EIDL grant or loan. 95% have changed how they conduct business, and 100% have at some point reduced hours, limit operations, and closed and reopened. Of the businesses that have reported so far, none have reported that they've closed indefinitely, so that's good. And then 100% of the businesses that have reported so far said that they found the grant helpful, so that's nice. There's just a couple of quotes from what we heard from our business survey. So just hearing from folks that just how much of an impact the funds that we were able to provide had for their business. So I want to say thank you to our team that made this happen in community development, Christina, Alicia, Tempest, and Dan, and then Kelly in finance. They really put a lot of work into this, and it's pretty amazing that we created a grant, and built the plane as we flew it, you would say, that we created this grant program and executed it. I also wanted to touch on kind of what's next, or what we're continuing to do for business support. So I'm continuing to track kind of federal, state, and county relief packages as they're being considered. So for example, Clackamas County is getting ready to release a 4th round of grants. This is going to focus on businesses that were impacted by the most recent freeze orders. And the county's also done a great job of launching the business recovery centers. The North Clackamas Chamber of Commerce is our business recovery centers. These groups have access to PPE and business advising resources. We also extended our outdoor seating program through the winter months, and we'll continue to track how businesses' level of interest in this outdoor seating program. And then recently, we've been looking into limitations on third-party fees, and so I'll expand on that a little bit. In July 2020, some neighboring cities started to place limits on third-party fees that can be charged for delivery or pickup. In Portland, these limits are 10% for delivery and 5% for pickup. And in Gresham did a 15% limit. What I've learned recently is that there is proposed legislation with the cocktail to go package at the state level. So this is something that could be considered in either what we just learned is the Monday special session at the state level, or if for some reason it's not included, then could also be considered in the January 2021 regular session. But this legislation is looking at kind of a statewide limit on third-party fees. And that is all I have for now. So I will stop sharing and happy to take any questions.
Anybody have any questions? Lisa, you're muted, Lisa.
I have a couple of questions. One is, you had it on the, like next to the last slide about the fee caps on Portland. In Portland, were 10% for delivery and 5% for takeout. But I mean, and I saw that in one of the articles about what's proposed in the legislature, and I didn't really understand that, because I mean, if you go pick it up yourself, you're not paying a third party. So what is that distinction?
My understanding is that you're still using the platform to make your order. So it's, you're still ordering through Grubhub, even though you're choosing to pick it up.
Okay. We had, we had a restaurant come testify to us at our last meeting. And I guess I see this as an opportunity for, there's the fee cap is one issue, and hopefully the state will pass that, and that will be, good. I think there needs to just be transparency in it. It costs to deliver, and you should expect to pay to deliver and it not to come out of the restaurant's cut, But I also see an opportunity here for our businesses to collaborate and maybe have a homegrown delivery, have a downtown, have just like the way pizza delivery companies have, pizza drivers have two people that, want to be delivery people and have a business that's just delivering for downtown Milwaukee businesses or something. So, I hope that our businesses are kind of exploring and talking to each other about some of those things like that.
They've been bought out by Grubhub.
Well, and I think all of our downtown businesses are pretty stretched right now. They are the business owners are the people who are working behind the counter, right? They've let go as much of their staff as they possibly can. So putting something like that together takes a lot of work. You've got to develop the whole program. You've got to hire someone, and then you still are paying them. So I don't know. I guess you could then create a means by which it was transparent that money was going to delivery. versus going to the restaurants. But I don't know that it would be a big improvement for the amount, especially for the amount of work it would take for our small businesses to collaborate and develop something like that. I think that would be pretty burdensome for them.
And there is,
I don't necessarily think so. I mean, I think you find a couple of entrepreneurial 20-somethings who want something to do, and they set up a business, and they, I don't know. I just think there should be sort of low burden ways to try something. It's a trial and error thing, but yeah.
There is a homegrown model out of Oregon City called Food on Demand. And so that's an option for Milwaukee businesses to sign up for and Milwaukee residents to see delivery from.
And I did notice that a few of our restaurants are on the Food on Demand site. And I know I've seen a couple, at least one of the food carts who says, only Food on Demand, not others because of the cut. Yeah.
I have a friend that's looking into creating kind of a nonprofit version of this, where it would just, the cost would simply be the cost to make it happen and pay the driver to do the delivery. But I think it is more complex than you're kind of picturing. Back in the day where we all had the paper menu from our favorite whatever Chinese restaurant, and we would just get up on the phone and call them, and they would send a guy over there. It's way more complicated than that. And
well, that's still how I order takeout. I order from their menu online, and I call them. I don't use Grubhub or any of those services. I call them and I go pick it up. I don't know, most of them have their menu online, but it's not an integrated sort of ordering service like Grubhub where you can peruse.
Sure, but as I learned this weekend, not all of the businesses are doing that. Not all of the restaurants. I tried calling multiple places downtown directly, and the only way I could place an order was through Grubhub. So that 5%, that's where it goes, because it's complicated to figure out how to run that in-house, because then you've got to have someone who's dedicated to paying attention to the phone, and you've got to have a separate stream. If you are taking all of your orders through an online third party, then you've got one place you're looking to get those orders and understand what they are and get them filled and get them out the door. And they're all set in order of when they came in. So you've got the timing is all set for you. So I think that's part of why those third-party platforms are being used, is for that simplicity of design and efficiency.
Anybody else, anything? Anyway, we kind of wandered off the main subject of this, which was the, helping out the businesses during this pandemic, which extraordinary job, team. Well done getting on top of it right away. I think we were one of the first cities that did some of that. And we certainly rolled it out faster than anybody else. So that's all on staff. You guys did an awesome job. And I'm very proud of the city and those efforts. And I'm a little bit shocked that there was money to return.
I'm thrilled that everybody who applied in that third round got funded. That's really great, because I know early on that wasn't the case, and there were some folks who really felt left out. So that's great. And second to what the mayor said, really excellent work. And thank you for being so creative and creating something from nothing and doing it so fast. And I think you heard it from the comments that that made a difference for a lot of folks. So thank you.
Thank you. I will say the state had a very strict deadline of when we needed to allocate the funds. And so I'm sure we could have found someone for that last $9,000, but we had a deadline to meet. So had to give it back. But they are reallocating those funds in future rounds that are coming out from that same state program.
Good.
So Allison, you mentioned toward the end that there's another county round. Are those county rounds things that Milwaukee businesses are eligible for? They are.
Yes. Yep,
And
absolutely.
you promote those to the businesses?
Yep, we'll send it out via email and we've been doing social media posts as we know about these rounds coming out at the county level.
Great.
I would just note Allison participates in a Clackamas County kind of coordinating committee. I don't know if that's the right term for it, but it's folks from the chamber and other folks who are doing similar kinds of efforts. And so anytime we learn about opportunities for Milwaukeeans, we're posting it still on our business resource page. And then Allison and the team have been doing pretty constant outreach to the businesses when there's opportunities and just letting folks know that it's coming out there. So we'll continue to both monitor and do direct outreach.
And then one piece with these surveys that we recently did is that one of the questions we ask is kind of what else do you need? So we're doing kind of direct follow-up with those businesses as if it's connecting them to resources for PPE or how to build an online platform to accept online deliveries, connecting them to those resources that exist. If it's the Clackamas County Small Business Administration or MISO or the Lewis and Clark Legal Clinic, connecting them, or the Business Recovery Center, connecting them to the resources that they need.
Yeah, just today, the chamber sent out an email about classes at the Small Business Development Center on, how to sell online and how to use social media, So, yeah, lots of classes.
Cool. Good work. Thanks. All right, if there's nothing else on that one, our next item is the Public Safety Advisory Committee and annual update, and that will be presented by their chair and Jennifer Bacchus, who's the engineering technician that I believe is staff on that.
Everyone, thank you. I'm Jennifer Bacchus. I'm an engineering technician with the City of Milwaukee's engineering department. I, along with Steve Adams, our city engineer, act as staff liaison for the Public Safety Advisory Committee, or PSAC, as everyone refers to it. Before we jumped into the work plan, I did want to just take a quick moment to kind of give a brief overview of the committee. It's comprised of representatives from each of the residential neighborhood district associations, as well as several at-large members. The committee is focused on public safety. So we frequently hear updates from Milwaukee Police as well as Clackamas Fire. And recently we've started working with Brenna Cruz, who's the city's emergency management coordinator. This past year has been challenging, but I'm happy to say at least that we've been able to meet regularly since April via Zoom, which has been great. I think we only had to miss one meeting due to COVID-19. So that was pretty great, actually. We've actually had pretty good attendance as well. We actually recently coordinated with the city manager's office and Bike Milwaukee to supply several of our neighborhoods with slow signs to kind of promote slower driving through neighborhoods so we can have safer walking and biking. You might have seen those as you've been driving around. We were able to hold our officer elections in July as planned, which was great. And Rob Reynolds was elected as our new chair. So I will pass it over to him to discuss our new work plan, which has a heavier focus on disaster preparedness. Scott, would you be able to put that up on the screen for us? Thank you.
As Jennifer said, our focus for this next year, I guess I'll wait a sec till this gets up so everybody can see it. We move it up a little bit, or is it just my screen that's... So our focus this year, because of all the disasters we've had, is to make sure our city and our NDAs are more prepared for the disasters. So we've been working with our CERT team. We have a couple of members that belong to the CERT team, which is part of Clackamas Fire. And so we're working with them to get connected with the city emergency manager, who is awesome. We greatly appreciated her being part of our last couple meetings. But we're looking at trying to find more churches or more buildings that are want to get certifications for disasters. So we're working on that. We're also working to get more people involved with the CERT program, so that each NDA has more people that are CERT certified. So those are two of our big things on this disaster plan that we were looking at. We also wanted to, we were working on the Safe School Route program that's kind of got put on hold because of the COVID crisis and the fire stuff this year. So, but we'll be working on that next year. I think the overview is that, our meetings are good as far as hearing from all the different NDAs and seeing if there are any concerns, and then bringing those concerns to like Steve Adams or to Jennifer, so they know what's going on in the NDAs. So that's been really beneficial, I believe. And then Steve's been really beneficial as far as when a question comes up, as far as planning or concerns that the NDAs have. He's there and can answer those. So that's been really beneficial this year. And I know that next year is going to be, there's some big planning things come up that bring forth a lot of concerns. The Monroe Greenway has a lot of people, has quite a few people that are, want to make sure the NDAs are involved. And so Steve's been working on that with us, and that's very beneficial. I think that's about it. I mean, you can look over our plan for this next year, and we're just trying to make sure everybody's aware that, there's opportunities out there if they need something. And Brianna's been awesome about bringing that forward since she started. So we're excited about having her involved with us. I think that's about all I have. Does anybody have any questions?
You want me to stop sharing my screen now?
Yes.
Okay.
You're good.
Scott.
So if nobody else does, I have a question. You said that you'd kind of put the Safe Routes to School program on hold, but we're continuing with those projects at our Linwood and the various SAFE programs. So what aspect of it are you guys putting on hold?
What I meant was our member who handles the Safe Route School program, or working with the schools. Yeah, working with the schools for it, not the projects that are already in process. But Nicole was working on, we're trying to work with the schools to set up other processes or designs for Safe Walk. And so that kind of got put on hold because she was having a hard time connecting with the school districts.
Okay, I see. So the training for the kids around how to walk and bike safely, that's on hold. Got it.
Yeah, that part, not the.
Yeah, no bearing on any of the projects, which is good.
Yeah.
Can I ask?
We don't have that kind of control. Come on.
Can I ask a quick follow-up question on that? I'm just curious about which schools have don't have action plans at this point. Do you know that offhand? I mean,
I believe none of the schools do, was my understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jennifer, that we weren't able to connect with the right people at the schools to make anything happen.
Linwood has an action plan, and so I'm wondering if there was which ones she was working with when kind of the pause had to happen. I understand there.
I don't know that we've gotten a good update from her on that lately, because I know she was just saying there was a lot going on. That is definitely something we could bring up with her just to try to get a better feel of where they're at. I know, obviously right now everything's kind of hard to work on, but
it's obviously not a focus with kids not walking to school right now.
They're walking everywhere right now. But, yeah. So she basically just said that we'll touch back on it when it gets back, but I'm not sure at this time which schools. And I know her term I think is up at the end of she's got one year left on it on PSAC, but we'll probably still work with her in her capacity outside of that, is my guess, because she's still a really good liaison for that.
Okay. Anybody else? Any other questions?
I don't know if it's a question or just something I wanted to mention about the emergency preparedness is one of my committee assignments for the city council is to the Regional Water Providers Consortium, which does, which is a connection of all the water providers in the region, as you can tell from the name. But they do a lot of emergency preparedness. They have a ton of emergency preparedness stuff when it comes to water on their website. They have a lot of resources, and I've always been a little bit frustrated that we don't use those and promote those to the residents. So I would just sort of put that on your radar screen for the PSAC. Also, the city owns, thanks to some help from the Regional Water Providers Consortium and getting a federal grant, owns a mobile water purification system that's like a trailer that you take down and get water out of the river or wherever and purify it in a water emergency. And there may be some opportunities. I mean, that's kind of under the public works department more than engineering, I guess. But there may be some opportunities at some point to do some drills on how to use that and get with the CERT team and get people sort of up to snuff on how that works and how to roll that out if we find ourselves needing that. So
That's awesome to know, because we've had that question come up several months in a row what that trailer was for. So we had no idea, and we couldn't find anybody that could tell us what that trailer was for. So that's awesome. That's awesome to know. So is it possible, Lisa, to maybe have you come in January or February to our meeting?
Well, actually, Peter just popped up, and Peter's the one who knows.
So if I can add, so that trailer requires special training. Now, our water department has gone through that training and has worked and done several drills with that trailer. It's not something that we can allow the CERT team to operate. So you have to be a certified sort of water operator to use that trailer. So we've gone through and done those drills. I think it's probably been about a year since we did the drill, but it's something that's not for the layman to operate. It requires some specialized training, and we can.
Well, operating the trailer itself, I get that, but the actual distribution, sort of networking distribution, once the trailer is working, water out there.
The way that the water is distributed is basically into plastic pouches.
Well, I guess my other question though, Peter, is it possible to make sure the CERT team knows who to get in contact with you guys, so that if there is an issue come up where they need something like that, they know who to contact?
Oh, sure, absolutely. Yeah, I'm in frequent contact with Linda, actually. So
okay, yeah, no, because that's awesome. That's exciting.
Maybe then would Peter, what do you think about the next time there is a drill, if COVID allows, would that be something that, at least for demonstration purposes, CERT and PSAC would be able to maybe just just observe?
I don't know why not. The drills are generally during the weekdays, so it's yeah. But I think that's absolutely a possibility.
If we couldn't get members there, perhaps we could take a video of it, and that could also be something that's distributed to as kind of education material for people, so they know that we have this. It's a cool resource.
And there may even be videos of that on the water providers website. I'm not sure.
I wouldn't categorize it as a cool resource. It's a resource that we have for emergency purposes.
Bit of a nerd, sorry.
Well, it's good to know, though. I mean, because like I said, we had a couple of NDA members ask, had seen the trailer, not know what it was for, and they were like, "Yeah." So that's awesome. Is there any other questions I can help out with?
Thanks, Peter.
I had a couple. I was interested to hear that you're doing some outreach to identify more potential temporary emergency shelters. I don't see that in the continued and ongoing disaster preparedness description in the report, so I would suggest adding that in there. or maybe it's worded in a way that it was clear to you, but I didn't pick it up from there. And then I know there's been a little confusion in my NDA around how the interface works with PSAC. So I just want to run this past you and make sure that I have a clear understanding. My understanding is that we have a PSAC representative from our NDA who attends our NDA meetings and solicits feedback on, hey, is there something that's going wrong, a place where there's a safety concern of some sort, and then they bring that to the main PSAC meeting. Is that correct? And then it's addressed.
Yeah.
Yes, at the end of each meeting, we have a section for NDA concerns. So every NDA brings up any issues they have. I can answer what I can answer. Steve is also there to answer any questions, especially that pertain to projects, which most of them are. So we try to answer all questions then and there, but if we need more research, then we'll take notes. We'll come back to the next meeting with updates on that. And then the representative will bring that back to their NDA.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. And then I was just curious about alternative street design standards and TSP updates being on the work plan, because my understanding is we're not really getting to a TSP for a couple of years yet. So I know that the emergency preparedness plan, that's coming up real quick, and it's great that you guys are on that. But those other two items are actually at the top of your list, and I'm curious how they got there.
So there was a big concern about the safety slow street signs. A lot of the NDAs did not want the original plan the city put out about making one-way streets and other things that were being put forward when the COVID first started. And so that's where I think that issue came up, is that the NDAs wanted to make sure they were involved in any decisions to come up with the roads. And so that's why it's top of our agenda, because of the safety issue, because there's been concerns with sidewalk crossings and the new designs of like Home Avenue and the Monroe Street Greenway. And that's part of the issue, I think, this was my understanding, is why we put it there at the top.
So there's two different things there, I think. We did a pilot program at the beginning of COVID that was sort of a riff on what Portland was doing with greenways and making trying to make more open space that was welcoming to pedestrians and cyclists. And we ended up only doing one pilot area, and that was in Island Station. And that's quite separate. And we did it, and we learned a lot. We're probably not doing it again, is my guess. There's no commitment there, but it was truly a pilot. So there's that. And then there's the greenways and alternative street design standards. So tell me more about what you mean by concerns about crossings in Monroe, and how the process the city is running around that has or does not have a role for PSAC.
Well, I think that it comes up from our NDAs that when they have a concern about, like my NDA had a heavy concern about how the design for Home Avenue and the Monroe Parkway, because that hits right in the center of our NDA, and they didn't see that their safety concerns were being met. And that's why they brought it to my attention. That's why I brought it to Steve's attention. And and Steve's explained several times to me, and I've explained to my NDA that we're still in the design phase. And so, for us to get over anxious about the design before it happens is ridiculous. But, it happens. People only hear half of things and only hear what they want to hear. So, we want to keep at the top of our plan to make sure that the safety is being taken into concern, which Steve has stated several times that it is. But we wanted to make sure that that was part of our main focus, because several of the NDAs were concerned about it.
I guess it's not clear to me how that makes it a work plan item for PSAC.
We want to make sure that we're involved in the design, the safety design, and make sure NDAs are involved in it. And it didn't seem like at one point that they were, and so that's why it's there. because that's part of the committee, is to make sure that we're providing safety items to the city council from our NDAs. And so when the NDA says we don't feel like we're being heard, so it's on our work plan, because we want to make sure, with Home Avenue starting this year, and then the Monroe Greenway starting next year, with the design going on now, we wanted to make sure we were heard.
Steve, I saw that you popped up as though you perhaps had something to say.
I've been here listening. The TSP, I can say there is funding. The first batch of funding for the TSP actually starts July 1st, 2021. So fiscal year 22, we have a small amount of funding. I believe it's 100,000. We have a larger pot of funding in fiscal year 23. So next year, I've been talking to Laura Weigel, planning manager, about kicking off the TSP probably late next summer, looking to hire a consultant, bring a consultant on, and start the process of, citizen meetings and discussing how we want to change it. The bulk of it will be changed in fiscal year 23. So we are going to start off there. As far as the projects, we are reaching out to the NDAs as for input at 30% and 60% plan design. So they have the NDAs and all the community members and businesses, they all get notified. They're able to give us feedback on what they like or don't like about the plans, or what we can possibly change things in. So we are working on doing that. I don't think that was quite as accurate when I first started here, but I think we have gotten into a good system of always reaching out now for community input.
The other thing that I missed, and I'm sorry, Kathy, was that we found out this year that there are funds available, safety funds available for the NDAs. And Steve was made aware of it, and he's working on it for so did you say, Steve, the 2022 budget, the safety funds that are available?
Yeah, the following budget, we'll put it together in winter of 22, but it's the fiscal year 23. Well, this fiscal year we're in the fiscal year 21-22 budget. Fiscal year 23-24 budget, we're going to look more about doing things. I need to work with Kelly too, because again, we have limited amount of funds, and we need to figure out how best to budget that and balance it with the NDAs. Yes, it's in the plan though.
Mm-hmm.
That was the other big issue, was the safety money that we were made aware of that wasn't budgeted for us yet, and so that's the other reason it's on there. So.
Looks like Kelly popped up too. I don't know if she wants to jump in.
Yeah, if y'all don't mind, I just want to make one quick clarification. So and I know that Council President Falconer and Mayor Gambit and probably Councilor Beatty know this better than me, but in the adopted SAFE plan, there was all the projects, and then there was a category of requested projects. So I think that the group knew that there were going to be things that came up that fell outside the identified projects, and they wanted to provide some flexibility for that. When we started the program, we were bonding, and you really do need to bond for specific projects. So we have focused on the project lists, and that's what the bonded resources are for. We know that we still need to fulfill that portion of the plan. And so what Steve is working on with PSAC is how to bring that online in the next budget. There are limited resources. The only clarification I'd make is it's not just NDA resources. It's not like it goes to specific NDAs. It was more of identifying there are requested needs that will come up. These requested needs come to PSAC, and then the group needs to figure out how to identify or how to prioritize and award resources to those projects. So just wanted to provide that little bit of context for those of you that haven't been in all those conversations.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thanks, Ellie.
Can I ask a clarifying question to something Steve said, which was about, outreach when projects get to 30 and 60% design? I mean, most of our projects are specifically in a neighborhood like Home Avenue or Linwood. But Monroe is obviously a project that cuts across a lot of neighborhoods. So, and it's really been a city priority for a long time and had its own special working group and all of that. So I assume those plans will be shared citywide when they're ready for that kind of. Okay.
Yes, indeed. We discussed this quite thoroughly within the city, that we will need to open up to all the NDAs, Bike Milwaukee, the businesses, everyone get some feedback into it, because this will be the main east-west bike corridor between I-205 and McLaughlin once the county builds their second half. So yes, that is the intent.
Great, thank you.
Okay, anybody else, anything?
Yeah, actually, Mayor, just wanted to add real fast that one of the things that staff's been working on for the last couple of years is making sure that when we're engaging around big projects, like what Councilor Beatty just said, where there's a project that cuts across multiple neighborhoods, that we are expanding our outreach and our engagement beyond our traditional sources as well. So I really deeply appreciate the work that Steve's been doing and Kelly's been doing and Jen's been doing and everyone's working on, namely around Monroe, to making sure that we're engaging with as many of our community members as possible as we're going through that design, since it will be such a key attribute of the city.
Okay. Anybody else? All righty. Upon adjournment of the work session, Council will meet in executive session pursuant to Oregon Revised Statute ORS 192.6602H to consult with counsel concerning legal rights and duties regarding current litigation or litigation likely to be filed. Thank you, Rob and Jennifer and Steve and Kelly and everybody who engaged on that piece.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, would it be okay to take a short break? And are we?
5 minutes?
It's a separate Zoom, so I'll get it up.
All right, so 5-minute break, and we'll be back in executive session at 5:17.
And there's a new link for that, right?
Yep.